Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I will call this meeting to order. Just a couple of reminders. I know we go through this each time, but because this is a virtual meeting, we'll be taking roll calls on each of the votes. And just a reminder to keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. And our initial we'll start with our initial roll call, which Linda will do. Linda?
Good morning. I will call your name. Please indicate that you are here. Grant Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Bridges.
Here.
Thank you. Greg Byers.
Here.
Thank you. Trevor Ebersol.
Present.
Thank you. Jorge Gastelum.
Here.
Thank you. Henry Ikwat Ukwa. David Janover.
Here.
Thank you. Scott Lowe. Adina Lund. Hal Marin.
Here.
Thank you. Jamie McCracken.
Gabriel Elias for Jamie McCracken.
Thank you. Mark Malachenko.
Here.
Thank you. Sumit Mohan.
Here.
Thank you. Paul Mood.
Here.
Thank you. Tim Oliver. Ryan Peters.
Here.
Thank
Tim
you.
Oliver here. Sorry about that.
I got you. Thank you. Did I say Ryan Peters? Yes. Eduardo Rodales.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Salas.
Here.
Thank you. Woodrow Scouten. Robert Yabez.
Here.
Thank you. Ed Stillings.
Here.
Thank you. Bob Thaxton.
Here.
Thank you. Kristen Teitler. Michael Weber. Troy White.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Wilcox.
Here.
Thank you. Herschel Workman. RJ Zetter.
Here.
And Chair, I know you are here. Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate everyone being here this morning. So we'll go to item 2, which is the call to the audience, but my understanding is we have not received any comments.
That is correct, Chair. There are no public comments for this item or any other agenda item.
All right, thank you so much. Item 3 is a report from Tim Strow, the MAG Transportation Policy and Planning Director. So I'll hand it over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Review Committee. It's great to see everybody this morning. I have a few updates before we get into the agenda. I want to start off first by providing a brief update on the development of the new Regional Transportation Plan. During the past 2 months, we've been conducting a survey with likely voters in the region, asking them their opinion regarding a possible sales tax extension in the fall of 2022. The main focus of the survey was to get a better understanding on the investment priorities of Maricopa County voters, understand how do they view the current transportation system today, and what investments would they like to see in the future. We also wanted to get a better understanding if voters would be interested in an extension of the half-cent sales tax, or would they be open for a possible increase. And is November the right time to bring the measure forward, bring the measure to the voters? Given that we are in a pandemic, we want to make sure the timing is right and the voters feel comfortable with their current economic condition. So the results of the survey are currently being processed by the planning team as we speak, and they will be presented to the Management Committee RTP work group later today, and will circulate through the committee process in the future. In addition to the polling work that was just completed, the next few months will be extremely busy for MAG staff as we continue to develop and model the fiscally constrained scenarios that will be presented to the policymakers starting next month. As I mentioned in previous meetings, the MAG modeling staff will be extremely busy during this time. So we ask for your patience in processing local modeling requests. The scenario and trade-off analysis will continue through May. It's going to be a very busy time. It's going to be very fluid, I should say. The goal is to have a draft investment plan in place by the end of June. So please stay tuned. We will have future updates as more information becomes available. The next item is a request from MAG safety staff. They're looking for 2 volunteers to participate in the Roadway Safety Program work group. The Roadway Safety Program was initiated by MAG in 2019. The goal of the program is to fund the short-term immediate safety improvement needs for region-wide efforts. A working group was formed in early 2019 that included members of the MAG Transportation Safety Committee and representatives from the Transportation Review Committee to develop the programming guidelines and policies and procedures of the program. MAG's safety staff would like to solicit interest from at least 2 TRC members to participate in this working group. The group is anticipated to meet at least 2 times in the next year. Charge of this working group is to review and enhance the program towards its goals. If you are interested in participating in this working group, please email MAG Transportation Safety Program Manager, Margaret Herrera, via email by April 15th. For those of you who do not have her email address, it is mherrera, HERRERA at azmag.gov, and you're always welcome to reach out to me or Linda for additional contact information. Rarf revenue collections were 3.2% higher this February than the previous year. HERF revenues were actually down 5.7% compared to February of 2020. The next item I have is that, the MAG continues to track impacts that COVID restrictions have had on the traffic in the region. Well, we started this back in March when the pandemic hit. We've actually reached those numbers again. So it's been a full year. Traffic volumes are at 100% of March 2020 levels. If you remember, the lowest number of vehicles on the roads were observed during the second week in April, which was about 63% of the normal levels. So unfortunately, this is one thing, one trend that we're going back to normal with, but at least it's the economy is rebounding and people are going back to work. So, Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Tim, for all the great updates. Are there any questions for Tim? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is our consent agenda, which includes the minutes from our February 25th meeting, Transportation Improvement Program project changes, deferral of fiscal year 2020 Safe Routes to School studies projects. Does anyone have any requests to pull out any of these items or any questions before we entertain a motion? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move. Anderson.
Thank you, Grant.
RJ Zeter, second.
Thank you, RJ. I have a motion to approve and a second, and we need to do a roll call. Linda?
Thank you. I will call your name. Please indicate how you vote. Chris Bridges,
Aye.
Greg Byers,
Aye.
Trevor Ebersol,
Aye.
Jorge Gastelum,
Aye.
David Janover,
Aye.
Hal Marin,
Aye.
Gabriel Elias,
Aye.
Mark Malachenko,
Aye.
Sumit Mohan,
Aye.
Paul Mood,
Aye.
Timothy Oliver,
Aye.
Ryan Peters,
Aye.
Eduardo Rodales,
Aye.
Christopher Salas,
Aye.
Robert Yadas,
Aye.
Bob Thaxton,
Aye.
thank you. Troy White,
Aye.
thank you. Steve Wilcox,
Aye.
And Chair, how do you vote?
Aye.
Anderson votes aye.
I got that. Thank you. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. All right, that takes us to item number 5, which is the fiscal year 2021 coronavirus relief MAG suballocated highway funding. This item will be presented by Patrick Stone, MAG Transportation Program Improvement Supervisor. So we'll turn it over to Patrick for presentation, and then we'll entertain a motion. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Review Committee. As stated, my name is Patrick Stone. I am the TIP supervisor here at MAG. Item today is on your agenda for possible action. What I'll be doing is I'll briefly do an overview of the funding. I'm going to provide 3 different scenarios for the committee to consider, and then go to a recommended option. Next slide, please. So brief background on the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act 21, or is also known as CRISA, signed into law last December, noting that the funding is for projects that would be eligible under Title 23, Section 133, which for people to know, that's the surface transportation funding within federal code, and also activities identified in the bill. And then the 2 I really want to highlight first, obviously, the thing people care about is the amount of funding. Just over 25 million is available for the region. And the key point, and we'll see this in some of my subsequent slides, the funds are available for obligation, which means the funds have to be committed, not expended, but committed by September 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. So I'm going to present 3 funding scenarios. This will be the first funding scenario, which would be to put the funding towards closeout. The thoughts would be adding the funding to closeout for both fiscal years 22, 23. Pros, some advantages. The funding can obviously be obligated by the September 2024 deadline. These are projects that are already in development, so we won't see any additional oversight or delivery costs associated with them. There's benefits to all agencies. And then a highlight, really, the 4th item, consistent with the intent of the funding, which is to fund local projects. One of the negative items, obviously, would be that this does not allow member agencies to submit new projects. Next slide, please. Option 2, the Freeway Lifecycle program. And so this option would be adding the funding to the FLCP. Again, similar pros to the first option. Funds can be obligated by September 2024. Again, the projects are already in development, so we don't see any additional oversight or delivery costs. And then the last item would be the funds would be used to supplant previously programmed sales tax funding. It wouldn't be growing the size of the projects. It would be shifting some of the funding. It would throw those regional dollars back, helping MAG's financial position. Negatives would be, again, doesn't allow member agencies to submit new projects. And one thing to kind of emphasize here, especially when you talk about the Freeway Lifecycle program, it's a very small amount of funding. So it may not lead to any advancements of projects. Next slide, please. And then the 3rd option would be to do a call for projects. So to add additional projects to the program. Benefits of this would be in converse to the first 2 options. It would allow member agencies to submit new projects. And MAG already has a very well-established and defined process for issuing calls. Some concerns with this potential scenario would be the funding may not be obligated by the deadline. There is quite a bit of a lead time on federally funding local projects. One thing to emphasize, these new projects would have ADA administrative costs that would need to be covered either by the jurisdiction or by the CRISA funding, which would then reduce the amount of funding that would actually go directly to construction. And one thing to keep in mind, and this is the item 3, excuse me, although the deadline for obligation is September 30th of 2024, given the lead time that ADOT requires and the FHWA requires, the projects would actually have to be ready earlier in 24 to meet that deadline. So we'd be looking at spring or at the latest May or June of 2024 to have those projects ready to go. Next slide, please. So based on the 3 scenarios, MAG staff is recommending the approval of scenario 1, which would be to use the suballocated portion of the CRISA funding to fund closeout in fiscal years 22 and 23. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be available at this time to take questions from yourself or other members of the committee.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so we'll turn it over to members of the committee for any questions or comments.
I have a question, Anderson.
Yes, go ahead.
What other programs right now are available for local governments to submit for local project of a small scale, of which these monies are a very small scale? So what else can the local governments look to be able to put in a project other than potentially this new money?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Anderson, thank you, Grant, for that question. I think there are a few other opportunities and in fact, actually, thank you. It's a good plug opportunity. So this summer, once again, MAG will be doing a call for projects, one for bike ped. I believe we have safe routes to school, some other funding sources, sweepers. I know we're in there paving unpaved roads. So there are opportunities annually for agencies to submit projects that fit within those definitions.
Can I ask a follow-up then? It looks like this money might be eligible for just local roadway expansions, which some of those other projects are very restricted in what you can apply for. Whereas this might be expansion of a road or a continuation of a road that has no other funding source.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair and Mr. Anderson, you're correct. As I stated in that earlier slide, the projects, or I should say, the funding is for projects that would be eligible for surface transportation funding. It is a very flexible category of funding. It would include roadway expansion, intersection improvements, projects of those natures. So yes, certainly it could go towards those types of new projects. I think the one thing, and Tim mentioned this earlier in his presentation, talking about the modeling, it's a level of effort exercise as well as we look at delivering the final years of the RTP and the new RTP. New projects have costs. MAG staff did a study on the cost of federalizing a project, and it could be between 20 and just short of 50% additional cost to federalize a project. It's $25 million. It doesn't go a long ways. I do understand your point. I think it's a good point. These small projects have a need. It's just, is this the best usage of those limited resources, or does it make more sense to leverage them against projects that have already seen those federalization costs put on them?
Certainly, there's an argument that we made that currently the financial resources within any community right now are very, very, very limited, and any additional funds might go a long ways, even if it does cost more.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Anderson, the point well taken.
Some really good points there. Any other comments?
This is Robert from Tempe.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Is there a local match that would be required with the CRISA funding?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Yabas. Robert, the legislation, it's unusual if you read the legislation. It can come at 100% OA, but I believe it is going to be MAG's recommendation that the local agencies still would have a match to extend the amount of funding that's available to the region and that can be utilized, consistent with how the funding has been done prior to now. And especially with the recommended scenario of using closeout, this would supplement an already existing and defined process. It would just put more capacity into that process. So we'd intend it to follow the similar guidelines of closeout that's been done in previous years.
Would that be 5.7%?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Troy with the town of Queen Creek. I'm just curious if not allocating all the fundings to the FLCP, do you think that would help free up any needed funding in the next RTP?
Mr. Chair, Mr. White, Troy, and I think that was part of the emphasis on the slide on talking about scenario 2. Again, multi-billion-dollar freeway lifecycle program. 25 million, it's important, it's substantial, it matters. I just don't think it would really move the needle, as it were, to advance projects out of potentially putting more capacity into there. I mean, it's consideration, obviously, but 25 million doesn't go as far as it used to.
All right, thank you, Troy. Any other comments or questions?
Anderson again. I'm going to have to at least vote no on the recommendation due to the fact that I think it leaves a great opportunity for small communities or all communities to apply for projects that they really can't fund any other way, even with a small match or with no OA, no additional obligation. I think that it gives really cities an opportunity that we don't have any other way. And I'd like scenario 3 my best.
Okay, thank you, Grant.
Mr. Chair, it's Chris Bridges with Gilbert.
Yeah, Chris, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, Patrick, the funds need to be obligated before the end of fiscal year 24, or they need to be expended?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Bridges, no, Chris, good question. It has to be obligated by September 30th of 2024, not expended.
Great, thank you.
This is Sumit Mohan from Goodyear.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, when do we have to make this decision?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mohan, Sumit, I think the intent is probably to sooner than later to get the plan developed, especially depending on the scenarios. Obviously, the intent putting it towards the recommended scenario, putting it towards closeout for fiscal years 22-23. There's a little bit of time there. Should the committee decide to look at perhaps option 3, doing a call for projects, it takes a significant amount of time to develop those projects, to develop that call, to get those calls out, get the projects in, and ensure those projects are actually ready and can be delivered sometime early in calendar year 24. So I think the emphasis is to try and get a decision sooner than later, but I would obviously defer to the committee's decision.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, RJ Zeter.
Yeah, RJ.
If there's no further comments, I'm ready to make a motion. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? Sumit, I guess I would just ask what did you have any thoughts on the timing, or were you going somewhere with that?
I was just wondering if we could have some discussion within our organization about the preference. Both sides of the argument seem interesting.
Okay. Patrick, has there been any other discussions with any other committees at this point on this decision?
Mr. Chair, this has actually been, if you will, briefed out at previous committees. Some of the policy committees, Mr. Pryor has briefed out the conversation and alluded to that this would be coming through the committee cycle in March and April, and that the intent was most likely to put forth a recommendation of using it for closeout. But this is the first formal presentation of the item.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, RJ has a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given the amount of money that's available and how I think thin it would be spread to open up to new projects, I move to approve scenario 1 based on the staff recommendation.
Okay, we've got a
This
motion.
is Ryan Peters from Chandler. I'll second.
And a second. Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote. Linda, will you do a roll call?
I will. I will call your name. Please indicate how you vote. Grant Anderson.
No.
Thank you. Chris Bridges.
Aye.
Thank you. Greg Byers.
Aye.
Thank you. Trevor Ebersol.
Aye.
Thank you. Jorge Gastelum.
Aye.
Thank you. David Janover.
Aye.
Thank you. Scott Lowe. Oh, he's not here. Sorry about that. Hal Marin.
Aye.
Jamie McCracken.
Gabriel
Oh,
Elias
sorry,
for Jamie.
Gabriel. Sorry,
Yeah,
Gabriel.
it's okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Mark Melichenko.
Aye.
Sumit Mohan.
Aye.
Paul Mood.
Aye.
Timothy Oliver.
Aye.
Ryan Peters.
Aye.
Eduardo Rodales. Thank you.
Aye. This
Thank
is
you.
Eduardo.
Christopher Salas.
Aye.
Robert Yabez.
Aye.
Thank you. Bob Thaxton.
Aye.
Troy White.
Aye.
Steve Wilcox.
Aye.
Thank you. RJ Zetter.
Aye.
The chair, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on then to item 6, which is an update on the I-10 Wild Horse Pass corridor study, which is going to be presented by Quinn Castro, MAG Transportation Engineer. Turn it over to you, Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of Transportation Review Committee. I'm Quinn Castro. I'm a transportation engineer here with MAG, and I'm going to talk to you about the I-10 Wild Horse Pass corridor. This is a 26-mile corridor that ADOT and Gila River Indian Community are working on a design concept report and environmental document. Next slide, please. So the image here is a map of the corridor. It is currently broken into 2 separate studies. The first is I-10 from State Route 202 to State Route 387. This is being studied for an environmental assessment and design concept report. The Gila River the Gila River Bridge project has been broken out as a separate study, and that one will have an environmental clearance and a project assessment. Next slide, please. So the first is the roadway widening. This is the final segment of I-10 between Tucson and Phoenix that is going to be widened to 3 lanes. To date, the completed deliverables of work are a public scoping meeting, agency scoping meetings, and developments of the alternatives. Ongoing items of work are cultural resources investigation, coordination with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and coordination with GRTI, which is the telecommunications for the community. Also, there is public safety coordination. So that is DPS and first responders that work on the corridor. Next slide, please. So next steps for this piece of the study is the recommended build alternative, which is expected to have approval this spring. And then development of the design concept report and environmental assessment, which is anticipated to be completed late this calendar year, and a public hearing to approve those spring of 2022. Next slide, please. The second study on this corridor is for the Gila River bridges. These are a pair of bridges that span the Gila River and are along the corridor. So the study intent here is to replace or repair the bridges. Completed to date is a public meeting, agency meetings, and a value engineering for the bridge work. Ongoing are development of the alternatives, a hydraulics and hydrology analysis, environmental clearance work, cultural resources investigation, and again, coordination with GRTI. So the plan is to have a corridor for communications along that runs parallel to the freeway itself and would also run along the bridge. Next slide, please. So next steps in the bridge study are a public presentation of the alternatives this summer, and then your design and environmental clearance spring of next year. Next slide, please. There are 2 websites that have been created to provide additional information as well as accept comments on both of these studies. So those are identified here. Next slide. And then I wanted to give you a brief update on funding that has been programmed along the corridor. So the project spans 26 miles, which means it's inclusive of both roadway within Maricopa County and Pima County, or Pinal County rather. There is a 6-mile segment that is programmed for final design and construction that is from the 202 down to Riggs Road. There is also design money for final design from State Route 587 to Dirkley Road, and then final design from Dirkley Road down to 387. ADOT has also programmed $50 million for the bridge project at this time. Next slide, please. This item is for information and discussion. So I am happy to take any questions or comments that anyone may have at this time.
Thank you, Quinn. Do any members of the committee have questions or any comments they'd like to share?
This is Anderson. I have a question.
Please.
Quinn, given all those studies that need to occur, what is your best estimate of start of construction for this wonderful project?
So if we go back 2 slides, Chair, committee members, I'm sorry, go forward 1 more. Thank you, there we go. So Mr. Anderson, if you look at this here, currently what we have programmed and available for construction is the 6-mile segment within the Maricopa County Prop 400 funded region. Beyond that, what's programmed is just for design and scoping essentially. So the plan for that is to have this segment under construction by 2025.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Quinn, for the presentation.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7. We're whipping right through this meeting today. Do any members have any agency updates that you'd like to share with the rest of the committee? Okay. How about item 8, future agenda item requests? Do we have any requests from members for future items? All right, this I think may be the fastest meeting we've had in a little while. So I appreciate everybody today. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is Thursday, April 22nd at 10 o'clock. And everybody stay safe. We'll see you in a month.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.